20 years ago, in the dead of night, two newborn babies were left on cold church steps, abandoned by the very people who brought them into this world. Their crime? Being born with skin too dark for parents who valued acceptance over their own children. This is the story of Malik and Elijah Freeman, twin boys rejected at birth, who would return 2 decades later to face the family that threw them away. What happened when they came back will break your heart and change how you see family forever. Before we dive into the story that shook an entire southern town, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt judged for something you couldn't control? Has anyone in your family ever made you feel like you weren't enough? This story is about more than rejection. It's about the price we pay when prejudice lives inside our own homes, our own bloodlines. If this hits close to home, drop a comment below. And hit that like button, because this story needs to be heard. Let's go back 20 years to a small southern town where Sunday church attendance mattered more than Saturday night sins, and where respectability was measured in lighter shades and straighter hair. This was a place where colorism wasn't just whispered about. It was lived, breathed, and passed down like curse inheritance. The Freeman family had worked hard to climb the social ladder in their community. Mr. Freeman was a deacon at the largest black church in town. Mrs. Freeman taught piano lessons to the children of doctors and lawyers. They lived in a nice part of town, drove a clean sedan, and smiled at all the right people. Their world was built on appearances, on being accepted, on never giving anyone a reason to look down on them. When Mrs. Freeman discovered she was pregnant with twins, the family celebrated. Another generation to carry on the Freeman name, to continue their careful ascent toward respectability. Friends threw baby showers with pastel decorations. Church members knitted tiny booties and blankets. The Freemans glowed with pride, already imagining christenings and first days of school. But the night those babies were born, something shifted in that hospital room. The doctor placed 2 healthy boys in their mother's arms. Thick-skinned, bright-eyed, perfect in every way except one. Their skin was darker than anyone in the family had seen in generations. Deep brown, rich, beautiful, but to the Freemans, terrifying. In that moment, Mr. Freeman's face went cold. Mrs. Freeman couldn't look at her own sons. The nurses noticed the silence, the way neither parent reached for those babies with the tenderness new life deserves. Something was wrong, and it had nothing to do with the twins' health. It had everything to do with generations of self-hatred, with a sickness that runs deeper than skin. The whispers started before they even left the hospital. Friends came to visit and saw the parents' faces, tight, distant, ashamed. The community that had celebrated this pregnancy now watched with curiosity and concern. Where were the joyful announcements? Why hadn't the babies come home? The Freemans spent 3 days wrestling with a decision that no parent should ever make, a choice rooted in the ugliest corners of their hearts. They looked at their sons and saw not children, but consequences, not blessings, but barriers to the acceptance they'd spent years building. On the 4th night after the twins were born, under a moonless sky thick with humidity and shame, Mr. and Mrs. Freeman made a choice that would haunt their town for 2 decades. They wrapped Malik and Elijah in warm blankets, not the soft, new ones from the baby's shower, but old, thin fabric that told its own story of unwantedness. They drove through empty streets to the First Baptist Church, the very place where Mr. Freeman served as deacon, where they'd built their reputation on piety and respectability. The church steps were cold stone, no cushion for infant heads, no warmth for tiny bodies just days old. Mrs. Freeman placed a bundle down, her hand shaking, but not enough to stop her. Mr. Freeman tucked a note into the blanket, folded once, clinical in its cruelty. No apology, no explanation of circumstance or struggle, just words that confirmed what the act itself screamed. These children were unwanted because of the shade of their skin. Then they walked away. They got back in that clean sedan and drove to the house in the nice part of town, and they tried to pretend 2 lives hadn't just been discarded like trash. It was Sister Amelia who found them the next morning. She'd come early to unlock the church for prayer meeting, and there on the steps she discovered 2 babies, still breathing despite the cold night, still fighting despite being left to die or be found by strangers. Sister Amelia was a woman who'd spent 60 years seeing the best and worst of humanity. But this broke something in her. She knew immediately what had happened. She'd seen the Freemans at church, noticed Mrs. Freeman's pregnancy, heard the whispers when the babies didn't come home. She read that cold, cruel note and understood exactly what kind of poison had led to this moment. Sister Amelia gathered those babies in her arms, both of them, together, the way they should have been held from the beginning. She carried them inside, wrapped them in the church's warmest blankets, and made a decision of her own. If their own blood wouldn't love them, she would. The community erupted with rumors. Some people suspected the truth, but couldn't prove it. Others made excuses, tried to explain away the Freemans' absence from church, the way they suddenly kept to themselves. But everyone knew, in a small town, secrets have a way of breathing through walls, of living in sideways glances and conversations that stop when certain people walk into a room. The Freemans had abandoned their sons to protect their reputation. Instead, they'd planted the seeds of their own destruction. I know this is heavy. It should be, because what happened to these babies still happens today. Maybe not on church steps, but in families where children are valued by shade charts instead of character. Have you seen colorism destroy relationships in your own family? Do you know someone who's been told they're too dark, not pretty enough, not acceptable? Drop a comment and share your truth. This conversation matters. Hit that subscribe button, because we're not afraid to tell the stories that make people uncomfortable. And trust me, what happens next will shake you even more. Sister Amelia didn't just take in Malik and Elijah. She raised them with a ferocity that only comes from loving children the world tried to throw away. She named them herself. Malik meaning king. Elijah meaning the Lord is my God. She gave them names that spoke of royalty and divine purpose. Names that said you are not defined by those who abandoned you. Growing up, the twins knew they were different. Not just because they were raised by Sister Amelia instead of parents, but because everywhere they went, they felt the weight of eyes measuring them, judging them, finding them lacking. In school, lighter-skinned kids got chosen first for everything. Teachers smiled brighter at children who looked a certain way. Even in their own community, within their own people, darkness was treated like a deficiency. Malik noticed it first in art class. When he drew himself, the teacher suggested he use lighter crayons. Make it more presentable, she said, not realizing she was teaching a child, that his own face wasn't acceptable. Elijah experienced on the playground when a girl told him she'd play with him if he wasn't so black. They were 7 years old, but Sister Amelia taught them something those discriminations couldn't touch. She taught them that their skin was not a curse but crown, that the darkness they carried was the same shade as the richest soil, the deepest night sky, the most precious ebony wood. She taught them that beauty measured by prejudice is no beauty at all. When the twins turned 12, they started asking harder questions. Why did they have parents like other kids? Where did they come from? Sister Amelia knew this day would arrive, knew that truth delayed becomes truth distorted. So she told them everything. She told them about the church steps, the worn blankets, the note. She told them about their biological parents, their names, their faces, the fact that they still lived just 3 miles away. That night, Malik and Elijah cried together in a way they never had before. Not the tears of scraped knees or playground insults, but the deep, gutting sobs of children learning that their own parents had looked at them and chosen rejection. Sister Amelia held them both, let them feel all of it, didn't try to cushion the blow with false comfort. But here's where the story shifts, where pain became fuel instead of poison. Malik threw himself into visual art with an intensity that startled his teachers. He painted faces in every shade of brown, black children crowned in gold, portraits that demanded viewers see beauty where society taught them to see less than. His art spoke what his voice sometimes couldn't, that worthiness isn't skin deep, that the color of family runs deeper than pigment. Elijah found his power in words. He started performing spoken word poetry at community centers, at high school assemblies, anywhere people would listen. His poems cut to the comfortable silence around colorism, named the disease living in black families, called out the self-hatred passed down like inheritance. He made audiences uncomfortable, and that was exactly the point. The community watched these boys grow into young men and felt something complicated. Pride mixed with guilt, admiration mixed with shame. Because everyone knew who the twins were, where they'd come from, and everyone knew the Freemans still lived in that house in the nice part of town, pretending their sons didn't exist. By the time Malik and Elijah turned 20, they'd built something remarkable. Malik's art was being shown in galleries across the state. Elijah had been invited to perform at universities, at conferences on colorism and identity. They'd turned their rejection into revolution, their abandonment into activism, but they'd never confronted the people who'd left them on those church steps. That reckoning was still coming. While Malik and Elijah rose, the Freemans fell. Slowly at first, then all at once, the way a reputation crumbles when it's built on rotten foundation. The rumors that started 20 years ago never fully died. They lived in knowing looks, in conversations that shifted when the Freemans entered rooms. People remembered the pregnancy, remembered the silence that followed, remembered 2 babies that appeared at Sister Amelia's door the same week Mrs. Freeman's belly went flat. Then, about 10 years after the abandonment, someone talked. A nurse in the hospital, tired of carrying the secret, confirmed what the community had suspected. The Freemans had given birth to twin boys. Those boys were the ones Sister Amelia raised. The math was simple, damning, and undeniable. The Freemans' carefully constructed world began to collapse. Church friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. Mr. Freeman was asked to step down from his deacon position, not officially for abandoning his sons, but for personal reasons everyone understood. Mrs. Freeman's piano students found other teachers. The social currency they'd sacrificed their children for became worthless overnight. But the cruelest blow came from within their own walls. The Freemans had other children, 2 daughters from a previous marriage, now grown women with families of their own. When they learned the truth about their half-brothers, about what their father and stepmother had done, they were horrified. How could you abandon babies because of their skin color? How could you live with that for 20 years? The daughters distanced themselves. Holiday dinner stopped. Grandchildren were kept away. The Freemans had chosen respectability over love, and now they had neither. Their health declined the way it does when guilt eats at you from the inside. Mr. Freeman developed high blood pressure, heart problems, spent nights unable to sleep. Mrs. Freeman's hands, the same ones that played piano for the town's elite, shook with tremors the doctors couldn't fully explain. Their bodies were keeping score even when their mouths stayed silent. Financially, they struggled. Mr. Freeman's business connections dissolved along with his reputation. Bills piled up. The house in the nice part of town needed repairs they couldn't afford. Everything they'd worked for, everything they destroyed their family to achieve, slipped through their fingers like sand. The isolation was perhaps the worst part. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, the Freemans became ghosts, present but unseen, alive but invisible. People looked through them instead of at them. The community that had once elevated them now offered the coldest punishment, indifference. For 20 years, they carried the weight of what they'd done. Some nights, Mrs. Freeman would stand at the window and look toward the part of town where Sister Amelia lived, where she knew her sons were growing up without her. Some nights, Mr. Freeman would drive past the church, see those stone steps, remember the choice that had cost him everything. But pride is a powerful drug. Neither one could bring themselves to reach out, to apologize, to admit the magnitude of their cruelty. So they suffered in the prison they'd built, surrounded by the very respectability that had seemed so important 20 years ago. And then, on a humid summer afternoon, a car pulled up to their house. 2 men stepped out, tall, confident, unmistakably their sons. Malik and Elijah had come home. This is the moment everything changed. 20 years of silence about to shatter. 2 sons about to face the parents who threw them away. Now I have to ask, what would you do in their position? Would you forgive? Would you confront? Would you walk away? Drop your answer in the comments, because this isn't just their story. It's a question every one of us needs to answer. And share this video. Someone in your life needs to hear what happens next. We're at the most powerful part. Stay with me. Malik and Elijah stood on the porch of the house they'd never entered, about to face the people whose DNA they carried but whose love they'd never known. They weren't here for a tearful reunion. They weren't looking for a family they could never have. They were here for something more important. The truth spoken aloud, accountability demanded, closure claimed. Mrs. Freeman opened the door. The decade had aged her, carved lines of regret into her face that no amount of makeup could hide. When she saw them, her sons, grown men now, successful and strong, her legs nearly gave out. She knew exactly who they were. You always know the children you abandoned. We need to talk, Elijah said. His voice was steady, controlled, carrying none of the rage that would have been justified. Mr. Freeman appeared behind his wife, and the recognition in his eyes confirmed what everyone already knew. No DNA test needed. No proof required. He saw himself in their faces, saw his own features reflected back at him in the skin tone he deemed unacceptable. They sat in the living room where the Freemans had entertained so many guests over the years, where respectability had been performed like a play. But today, the performance ended. You left us on church steps, Malik began, his artist's eyes taking in every detail of the people who'd given him life, then tried to erase it. We were 4 days old. You wrapped us in old blankets and abandoned us because our skin was too dark for your comfort. Mrs. Freeman started to cry, not the dignified tears of a woman in church, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone finally facing what they've done. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I was young. I was scared. I didn't know." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Elijah interrupted. "You knew we were your children. You knew we were healthy, innocent, perfect. And you threw us away like garbage because you valued other people's opinions more than your own sons' lives." Mr. Freeman sat rigid, pride still fighting surrender. "You don't understand the pressure we were under, the expectations, the way people would have looked at us, the way people look at us every single day." Malik's voice rose for the first time. "The discrimination you were afraid to face, we've lived it every day of our lives. The difference is we had Sister Amelia teaching us we were worthy. You had each other and still chose hate. The truth hung in the air like smoke. For 20 years, the Freemans had told themselves stories to justify the unjustifiable. But here, face to face with the sons they rejected, every excuse crumbled. "We didn't come here for your love," Elijah said, standing. "That ship sailed the night you left us in the cold. We came to tell you what you lost. You lost 2 sons who would have loved you. You lost watching us grow, seeing us graduate, celebrating our successes. You lost everything that matters because you were afraid of what didn't." Malik pulled out his phone and showed them photos, his art exhibitions, Elijah's performances, awards they'd won, lives they'd built. "This is who we became without you. Sister Amelia saw what you couldn't, that our skin wasn't a curse. It was never the problem. Your fear was." Mrs. Freeman reached out, tried to touch Malik's hand. He pulled back. "Don't. You don't get to touch us now and pretend 20 years of abandonment can be erased with tears. We're not here for forgiveness. We're here so you understand the weight of what you did. We have a family," Elijah added. "Sister Amelia, the community that raised us, the people who loved us when you wouldn't. We don't need you, but you needed to hear this from our mouths. You abandoned us, and we survived. We thrived, not because of you, but despite you." The twins walked toward the door, their business finished. Mrs. Freeman collapsed into sobs behind them. Mr. Freeman sat frozen, his pride finally broken by the reality of 2 sons who become men without him. At the door, Malik turned back one last time. "I hope you find peace with what you've done. But that's your work, not ours. We're free of you." And they left, not with the satisfaction of revenge, but with something more powerful, the knowledge that their worth was never tied to the people who rejected them. This story isn't just about Malik and Elijah. It's about every person who's been told they're not enough because of their skin tone, their features, the way they naturally exist in the world. It's about the poison of colorism that lives inside our own communities, our own families, destroying bonds that should be unbreakable. The Freeman parents lost everything chasing acceptance from people who didn't matter. They sacrificed their sons for respectability and ended up with neither. Meanwhile, those same sons built lives of purpose and power, proving that true family is chosen through love, not assigned through blood. Here's what we need to remember. Love cannot be measured by shade. Your worth is not determined by others' ignorance. And when people show you who they are through their cruelty, believe them. But don't let their rejection define your value. Malik and Elijah's story reminds us that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can acknowledge your pain without giving power to the people who caused it. You can walk away from toxic family and still build beautiful, loving relationships with the people who choose you. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it. Someone needs to hear this today. Drop a comment below. What's your biggest takeaway from Malik and Elijah's journey? And subscribe to Earthly Tales because we're telling the real stories, the painful ones, the ones that matter. Sister Amelia proved that love transcends biology. Malik and Elijah proved that rejection doesn't determine destiny. And the Freemans proved that prejudice, even against your own children, will always cost you everything that truly matters. Your skin is not your worth. Your color is not your curse. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve space in your life. This tale is reminding you that the most powerful stories are the ones that force us to face uncomfortable truths. Until next time, remember, you are enough exactly as you are,